YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Today we're talking NFL contenders of the 2022 season. It's a tier video. I actually split this up into 4 tiers. So first, teams that I think can win one playoff game max this year. And then the next tier would be teams that I think can reach the conference championship, but not win it, just reach it. The next tier would be teams that I think can make the Super Bowl, but a Super Bowl loss is their ceiling. And the final tier is teams that I actually think can win the Super Bowl this season. So, a lot of people probably would just list every good team in that top tier, but I tried to split it up. Tried to get maybe a little bold, would narrow it down as best as we can here. So 4 tiers, so not every NFL team we'll talk about in this video, but really excited about this one. You guys are playing along on Twitter. I asked you the same question. You can play along in the comments. A lot of videos like this on the channel, more to come. Full NFL coverage here, so like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Always interacting with you guys on there. We just got accepted in the super follows too. More to come with that. So link down below for that Twitter. So here you go. I asked you guys the question. Some of you commenting one team. I'm kind of asking you to list which teams. Maybe you have 4, maybe you have 8, maybe you have 12 teams that have a shot to win the Super Bowl this year. So pretty cool if you guys play along there. So let's start with this 4th tier, which is teams that I think the divisional round is their ceiling. I see them winning one playoff game max. And again, I try to get bold, try to really narrow it down, split these teams up, not just throw all the good teams. Well, this team's good. They have a shot to go to the Super Bowl. They got to have better than a tiny shot. So I think the Cardinals might be the top team in this tier. Cardinals, Eagles, Saints, those teams probably. I think they can win a playoff game. I don't see these teams winning more than one playoff game. And a lot of people probably disagree, probably fans of these teams. The Cardinals kind of got to get over that hump. They got to get better in the impact games, especially down the stretch of the season. They were a little bit of a mess in the playoffs last year. Of course, it's a new year. They have young players like Kyler Murray that'll continue to improve. So therefore, they could be better. They did lose Chandler Jones. That's tough. They'll miss Hopkins for a little portion of the season there. But it's a team that, maybe in that first round of the playoffs, I could see them dominating maybe. Maybe some people have a hard time seeing them win a playoff game. It's just hard for me to see them stay consistent enough where they have struggled to do that, more than one game. The Eagles, love the Eagles roster. That they made the playoffs last year after starting slow was impressive. Heading in the right direction. It's just hard for me to see. And Jalen Hurts can improve. Jalen Hurts is a likable guy, so I'm rooting for him for sure. But it almost feels like the Eagles are kind of preparing to find a quarterback of the future still, the way they handled this offseason. But can Hurts is really the question when it comes to the Eagles. Can their quarterback play, their passing game, win more than one playoff game? I don't think so. I don't think so. And the Saints would be next. Very good roster. Hopefully healthier than they were last year. I like Jameis Winston. I think he's probably better than most people think, but can he stay consistent enough? Can this team stay healthy and consistent enough to win more than one playoff game? I think they'll get back there maybe next year, but this year I see one playoff win max for them. Miami Dolphins are heading in the right direction. I think they can make the playoffs and they have a shot to win a playoff game. It's just a question of Tua. That's really the question because they built a very good offense around him finally because they have an offensive line. They have weapons, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle in his second year. I love the defense. How it will be without Flores. I'm not really too worried. Slight step down, if anything. It could even be better because it's so talented. They had a lot of young players. Jalen Phillips, Javon Holland that were studs last year. Now they're in their second year. So Dolphins, I think with that defense and then maybe progression of Tua Tagovailoa, they could win a playoff game. I just don't see more than that. Will they stay consistent enough offensively to win more than that? Mike McDaniel maybe can get that offense that way. Year one, though, a little tough. Washington Commanders, put an S at the end of that. Graphics guy jacking it all up here. It's all right. He's on thin ice, though. But the Commanders, I think this is their ceiling as well. Tough to see Carson Wentz going further than this. But the defense needs to be better than it was last year as well. Defense needs to step it up because the defense has potential to be very, very good. But they have talent. It's a very talented roster on paper. Can they do more? Put the Patriots in here. It feels like on paper the Patriots kind of got a little bit worse than last year, mainly losing J.C. Jackson. That's kind of the main part of it. But the offense really could get better another year with Mac Jones. Maybe some of those receivers can step up. They had last year, and Aguilar, maybe he can step up. But they had Devontae Parker this year, another draft class. Last year's draft, people question this year's draft class, but last year's worked out pretty good. So maybe they'll take a step up again. I think the maximum, though, is one playoff win, the very maximum there. And I put the Steelers in here. I was originally not going to put the Steelers in here because they're either going with Pickett or Trubisky. I'd like to think it's Pickett. And I originally was not going to put them in here because, just that's why, because the quarterback play, and they didn't really feel like a playoff team last year, even though they clutched up and made it. And then we kind of knew they weren't winning a game in the playoffs last year. So, but I threw them in here. They always find ways to win. They're always a tough team. And well, I'm not a huge Pickett guy, but, Roethlisberger struggled at times last year. So is it asking a whole lot for Pickett to be the same or better? Roethlisberger was kind of clutch late in games, late in the year, using his intangibles, how smart he is, his experience, I should say. So that would be the difference there. But the Steelers got talent. The defense took a step down last year. They still made the playoffs. Maybe they can get back to where they were, So I added the Steelers in here into this. I originally wasn't. So these teams, this doesn't mean they're winning a playoff game. This doesn't even mean they're making the playoffs. This is, to me, their ceiling. So if your team is not, if there's teams that aren't mentioned in this video, it's because they didn't make it. I don't think they can maybe make the playoffs is probably their ceiling. Tier 3, conference championship ceiling. So these teams can make the AFC or NFC. We actually have 2 from both conferences. AFC or NFC championship, I don't think they can win it. I think the furthest they'll get is making that conference championship game. I do not think they'll win that game if they get there. Doesn't mean I think they're going to get there. So put the Raiders in there. New coaching staff. I like Josh McDaniels. Hopefully it works out for him better this time. I think it can. They have talent. Derek Carr is very talented. Now he's got his boy Devontae Adams, who is arguably the best wide receiver in football. They have a good group of running backs. Hunter Renfrow is emerging. Looking at the defensive side, they had a good defensive coordinator in Patrick Graham. They add Chandler Jones to already Max Crosby. So the pass rush is looking good. So they're much improved. They can be a very solid team this year. I think maybe we're just one more year maybe to call them legit Super Bowl contenders. So they can jump from this tier 3 after this year to tier 1 another year, in my opinion. I think the defense heading in the right direction, but there still are some spots on that defense where the edge, specifically the edge rush looks good. Middle linebacker looks good. Perriman. I like Marrig. They're heading in the right direction there. What are we going to get from those corners? What are we going to get from Abram? What are we going to get from the actual defensive line, the interior, which is very important in Patrick Graham's scheme? So maybe it's still, I don't want to say work in progress because they're already, usually when you use work in progress, it's kind of they're at the bottom. The defense should be pretty solid, should improve, but it's in terms of getting to tier 1, it's still a little bit of a work in progress. But that offense should be pretty good. There was sometimes where it would go a little bit cold. Offensively, like, where's the offense? Sometimes it's so explosive, high powered, can they get more of that, consistently? So I think they can, and it's tough being in that division as well. So I think they can make the conference championship game. I just don't see the Raiders winning that and getting the Super Bowl just yet. The Colts I put in here, they should have got better because they had Matt Ryan instead of Carson Wentz. See where Matt Ryan is at his career. He was kind of up and down the last couple of years, but it's an improvement. He should be good in that Reich scheme. They have studs on their team, of course. Offensive line should be in check. Jonathan Taylor. Wish they had a little bit more receivers. They could add T.Y. Hilton still at this time recording this. He's still a free agent, or Julio Jones. But how much is he going to give you? Defensively, they made it a lot better on paper. Kind of wish they got those guys while Eberflus was there because I really liked his defense, the way he coached defense there. And Gus Bradley's kind of been going downhill, but they've added a lot of talent. So the Colts could be a lot better this year, not making the playoffs last year to reaching the conference championship game. It's just hard for me to see them getting over that hump. They've been a little inconsistent throughout the last couple years, even when we felt like they're good, but some weeks are like, all right, could this team win the Super Bowl? And then there's some weeks like that's not a playoff team. Like, what is that team? So can they stay consistent? That's what the playoffs is all about. So people forget. People look at this team that this team's very good. But they don't think about you got to stay. It's consistency. You got to be when playing the best. You got to be playing your best every single week. There cannot be a hiccup in there because you will lose. So some of these teams, it's hard to trust them to They can look super good the first week of the playoffs, maybe the second game of the playoffs, but can they do 3 in a row? Can they do 4 in a row? That's kind of the question there. But the Colts, this is to me their limit. Put the Cowboys in here as well because they got talent. They're explosive. They have a high-powered offense. The defense stepped up last year. They have a MVP type, the defensive MVP type guy, and Micah Parsons there. The coaching seemed a little better, but offensively, people would agree that it needs to be even better. But I think this is their ceiling. They struggle consistently against the big-time teams in these big-time games. It's like last year. I tried to get bold and predict different things to happen, but after that first round of the playoffs, it's like it's the same old stuff. Even the first couple rounds, it's kind of the same old stuff. The same teams just can't win the same big games. But Cowboys are talented enough to win, finally, beat the Niners or whoever it may be in the first round of the playoffs. They're talented enough to get to the conference championship game, but that is the absolute ceiling for me. It's kind of hard because it's the Cowboys and they've let us down in the past to even get to that point, but they are talented enough to get to that point. That's kind of the Vikings situation as well. They got the talent. You look at this Vikings roster, they got talent, almost superstar talent, everywhere. Like, why haven't they been better? They seem to choke games or not get as far as we think they can get. Maybe it's a little bit different this year because it is a new coaching staff. It's a new look Vikings, maybe a little bit more of a passing attack there, or more passing attempts, I should say. They have a superstar pass rush in Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. Now the big question is health with them because they've been beat up the last couple of years, and that pass rush specifically, can they stay healthy enough to make it this far, make it further? It's tough to say. So I think with the talent they have and the new staff that should help them in the right direction, this is the absolute ceiling. It's just extremely, extremely tough to see them get to the Super Bowl, even though they may be heading in the right direction. They should be a lot better this year if healthy. It's just very tough for me to see them get past that point, but they have the talent to get there. It's kind of like the Cowboys there. So those are the 4 teams in Tier 3. Tier 2 is Super Bowl loss ceiling. This is tough because I like a lot of these. These teams are very, very good. I like their chances of being a great team here. It starts with the Baltimore Ravens, who I think they're going to get healthier this year, so they're going to be dangerous. I liked what they did in the offseason. They're kind of changing things for the better for defense. They're focusing. They add those safeties. They're focusing on maybe more zone coverage because they've been limited to man, and those best teams that they had to go against, Bengals, Chiefs, Bills, they dominate that man coverage, their old scheme. So they're changing things for the better there. Again, they're getting healthy. They're very, very talented. Lamar Jackson is a problem. I don't see them winning, even though they almost have that roster. I just don't see them winning right now because will they be consistent enough specifically, I'd say, in the passing game because of lack of receivers. And I guess Lamar, I'm a big Lamar fan, but I guess Lamar can be a little, for a superstar guy, I guess we'll say, can be a little inconsistent and throughout the whole season with his passing game. For the most part, it's fine. It's good. I believe in Lamar for sure. But so can they go? They're going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs. They can get in the playoffs thinking this might be maybe the best playoff team. But can they be consistent enough every single week? The wild card round, maybe there is no wild card round for them, but divisional round, conference championship, get to the Super Bowl, and then win the Super Bowl. Can they do that many games with a consistent passing attack, with the lack of receivers, staying healthy because health is a big issue for them? It's hard. It's hard to see them. I could very well see them go to the Super Bowl. It's just hard for them to say that consistent, win that extra game, all those games in the playoffs. That's a tough part about the Ravens because they're going to feel like all 4 of these teams are at times are going to feel like Super Bowl teams, but can they stay consistent enough, and healthy enough for the Ravens' sake to actually win the Super Bowl? The Broncos, tough one as well because they got a talented roster. We knew that before. And they add Russell Wilson. We think they add a better coaching staff there. We'll see. We think the play calling is definitely going to be better. Russell Wilson's done the job before, got the job done before. And again, they have talent everywhere. So you look at the Rams last year. They had Matt Stafford. Boom, they win a Super Bowl. So can the Broncos do it, Russell Wilson? Maybe you put some sort of percentage on it. I didn't want to just load the tier 1 with teams because I think that's kind of lazy. I ended up putting them in this tier. I think maybe a year. I don't think everyone's gonna be like the Rams. The Rams I think had more talent. They had Matthew Stafford, and where Russell Wilson's at in his career, where Matthew Stafford's at in his career, you kind of can argue who's better either way. But the Rams had superstar talent, and just to list a couple. in Cooper Kupp, Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, the guys that single-handedly can take over the game, any playoff game, a Super Bowl. And the Broncos got talent, don't get me wrong here, but do they have those superstar elite talent guys to take over and single-handedly win games, pick the team up? That's the difference between the Rams if you want to compare, because you got a new quarterback. Can you win right away? Next year, I think they can be in that tier 1. As long as Russell Wilson looks all right this year, looks healthy, they can be in that tier 1 next year. But, yeah, him being back to normal and being healthy is also a question. Not that doesn't mean anyone's doubting it. It's just to go to the Super Bowl, one thing. To win it, they got to click. They got to stay consistent. They got to be healthy. Look at that pass rush group, too, which on paper it looks pretty good. Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory, but guys that have missed throughout their careers quite a bit of games, so if one of those guys goes out, you kind of worry about the pass rush a little bit off the edge. So I leave the Broncos in this tier for now, but quite the turnaround. They can get to that tier 2 of teams just like that. Tennessee Titans, I'll put here as well. The last few years, they're very consistently good. There's times throughout the year where they look like the best team in football, talking regular season. And there's times where this team could go win the Super Bowl. It kind of feels like that. But then we get to the playoffs, and it's almost the same old thing. Like, they kind of rely on specifics. They rely on the run game working. Teams are game planning for it better. And don't get me wrong, Tannehill, I think, is solid. But can they get over that hump where – and they haven't even been able to get to this point. So there's a different hump they got to get over. But they are – an extremely talented team, a dominant team throughout every season. Can they figure out in the playoffs? I think this is kind of their maximum here, on where they can get to. Last year going to the playoffs, I thought they can go win the Super Bowl, but it's kind of the same old story. But I'm going to say their ceiling is the Super Bowl loss. But I will say, and they did lose A.J. Brown, so that hurts them a little bit there. We'll see what Burks can do for them right away. And they had Robert Woods, of course. So that definitely helps. But I will say I love their defense. I think people are sleeping on their defense. At the end of last year, it looked like an elite, maybe the best in football, that defense, with the progression of some of those guys, the guys that they added. So going into this year, why should that change? I think they can have a dominant defense, maybe the best in the regular season up there for sure. And maybe that can kind of get them the distance. It's just hard to see them actually winning it, though, because they rely on specifics. They rely on that run game working. That's just the name of their game there, and they don't have A.J. Brown anymore. So this is kind of the furthest I see them. And the 49ers have kind of been this team for a bit, like very talented, very dangerous in the playoffs, very well coached, very well put together. It's just tough for me to see them winning it. First year Trey Lance starting, and Trey Lance could be a problem. Even if he struggles as a passer a little bit, he could be a bit of a problem. Because we just think of that 49ers offense, and you add a little more good to that running game, because you got to worry about Trey Lance running. Where is he going to run? A little bit more misdirection, maybe more like read options, things like that, and that kind of can be a problem for defense. And that run game's already a problem. We know they have a good defense, so they will be a problem. It's just hard for me to see them get over that hump, stay consistent enough to actually win that Super Bowl, especially what kind of feels like what is a rookie quarterback in the second year, but. So these 4 teams, very, very good, very talented teams at times throughout the year. Most of the regular season, they will feel like Super Bowl teams. Can they stay consistent enough, healthy enough, get over that hump? That's kind of the stories of these teams there. So on to the Big 8. These teams, I think a team that will win the Super Bowl this year is on this list right here, that will win Super Bowl 57. And we'll start at the bottom here, because I said in the beginning of this video, I said I have 8, sorta, and that's because the Cleveland Browns. With the Deshaun Watson situation, I have no prediction on what's going to happen in the suspension. So I put the Browns on this list if Watson is suspended for a short amount of time or no time. I don't think the no time is going to happen. But if it's 6 games and they kind of can win some games and get him in and get to the playoffs. That's all they got to do there, because this roster with Deshaun Watson is extremely talented. This defense is about to take it was good enough last year, but it's about to take another step up. They've been building it very well. I mean, they're strong in every part of it. I'm sure they can be a little bit better in the interior defensive line, maybe, but they got that pass rush. Maybe the best pass rusher in football, Myles Garrett. They got emerging players at the linebacker position, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They're loaded in the secondary. They've added those big-time players throughout the last couple of years. Newsome was fantastic. Newsome's got to stay healthy, but he was fantastic. He was on the field last year. Him and Denzel Ward were one of the best cornerback duos in football. Offense, they had Amari Cooper. They have that dominant run game. They have Deshaun Watson. They have a great offensive line. Njoku's the guy that's getting better. Before, it's like stack the box, and you still really can't stop the run. Now it's like, what the hell do we do? Because the passing game is going to be that much more dangerous. And on top of that running game, they can win with either if Deshaun Watson's on the field. It's a very, very talented roster. The tough part, we'll say Deshaun Watson is, evaluating this roster, and then with Deshaun Watson, we'll say suspended 6 games or less, just based off evaluation, they definitely belong on this tier 1. But there was a side of me that's like, if they're in the playoffs and Deshaun Watson's playing, can they actually win a Super Bowl? And not because of their talent, but because imagine if Deshaun Watson's able to play and wins the Super Bowl this year, all hell will break loose. So will the NFL, I hate thinking like that, but will the NFL, the refs maybe put a stop to it? So I was a little hesitant for multiple reasons to put the Browns in here because of that. I think some people might think that's ridiculous to say or think, but some people might agree with me. Can the NFL allow Deshaun Watson to win a Super Bowl this year? It's an interesting thought. So it's a team that's kind of borderline in here. And the Packers were also kind of borderline. I actually originally had them in tier 2 because it's the same old story with the Packers. They're a dominant regular season team, and they can't get over that hump in the playoffs. They're disappointing. The offense for some reason can't really get going. And that's kind of been the same old story. It's like, when they lost the 49ers, I'm like, it's the same thing. Like, this team just can't win the Super Bowl. They just can't do it. And then they lose Devontae Adams. They lose Darius Smith, which they didn't have him last year anyways for that season. And then, so I'm sitting here like they got to be in tier 2 because they couldn't do it before. Now they don't have these star players, mainly Devontae Adams we're thinking about here. Are they getting any better? So I originally had them in tier 2, and I pushed them up to tier 1. I think they have a shot to win the Super Bowl, and that is because I really like what they're doing with their defense. It got a lot better last year, and they built this defense to possibly be very high on this defense. I think it could. That's not my prediction, but I think it's very realistic to be. They could be the best defense in football the way they built that thing. And just thinking if they have the best defensive football in playoff time, and it performed in that 49ers game too, and they have Aaron Rodgers with the best defense in football, they got to have a shot to win the Super Bowl. We're counting on some, things have to happen. They have to have maybe the best defense or second best, third, whatever in football. Aaron Rodgers still has to be playing like himself, but thinking of it that way is, okay, they got to be in tier 1. It's just without Devontae Adams, how will these receivers be? The running game is going to be fine. But then thinking, they're going to get Elgin Jenkins back. They're going to get Bakhtiari back. They're going to get Jair Alexander back. These guys are going to be back, hopefully full-time. That also is a positive. So I threw the Packers on this list. The Chargers I put in here, Justin Herbert's the real deal, could continue to get even better, which I think he will, which is scary. They should have a better running game. The offensive line should continue to develop well. The receivers, they were disappointing last year. They had production, but they dropped the ball more than anybody in the league last year, and they dropped some touchdowns as well. I just don't think that's going to happen again. I don't think they'll drop the ball 38 times. They had Everett in that mix as well, tight end, weapon of a tight end. So I think they'll be better. I think Keenan Allen will be better, and he was good last year, but I think he'll be better, back to kind of his normal self because he had some uncharacteristic drops. They had touchdowns taken away from drops, from stupid penalties, not converting on 4th down. I think all that will be better. The secondary is looking loaded. They had Khalil Mack. They've had some other pieces there. The only thing here is that run defense, because you cannot win this if you cannot stop the run. You cannot win the Super Bowl. People don't realize that. If you cannot stop the run, you will not win the Super Bowl. It's the easiest way for a team to beat you, and you got to go throughout the playoffs and consistently. And the Chargers were god-awful stop and run last year, but they should have improved it because they added some pieces. These aren't pieces that say, okay, we're going to stop the run. Not only are we going to stop the run, we're going to stop it at a high level. It's not a 100% sure thing fix every week. That's kind of the problem here. So they're not going to be dead last. I think the Steelers might have been dead last. Steelers, Chargers. Even though Steelers statistically were last, I think the Chargers were the worst, in my opinion, based on what I watched last year, stopping and run. They are not going to be last or second to last. They are for sure going to boost it up. How much is the question? So that's why maybe you would hesitate to put the Chargers in here, because there's teams even in the middle of the pack that you consider they can't stop the run in playoff football, and they can't win the Super Bowl, right? So they're going to have to be way higher than where they were last year. Not just higher, way higher. But just something about this team. I'm a big Justin Herbert guy. Something about Justin Herbert, this team. what they've added this year, I believe they can do it. I definitely believe they can do it. Cincinnati Bengals next. They made the damn thing last year, so they have a shot to win it, in my opinion. They were very close last year. They have a shot this year. They improved the offensive line, which was kind of the only thing they needed to do. I do think some people will make the mistake of the Bengals were in the Super Bowl last year, and maybe they should have won the Super Bowl last year, and they didn't have an offensive line. Now they have it, so that means they're going to win the Super Bowl this year. I'd say that's a mistake to do that. It doesn't mean they won't or anything like that, and they can. It's just a whole different season. Everything, a game of inches, anything could be different. Other teams got better as well. But the Bengals are in position to be able to contend to win that Super Bowl because they have talent. The scary thing is they had so much young talent that was continuing to get better, continuing to improve. So that is why, they're just super talented team that fits today's era. So that's why they're up here. Put the Chiefs up here. When you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you definitely have a shot. You have Travis Kelce, the offensive line where it went from 2 years ago to last year, what it could continue to become. It could be the best offensive line in football. They don't have Tyreek Hill, but they have more options for Mahomes to scan the field and throw the ball to, which could be, there's some teams out there, even playoff teams, that they would maybe rather play the old, just Kelce and Hill instead of the variety of guys. There's some teams that we're glad we're not dealing with Hill with Mahomes there. Defensively, they're going to run a little bit more zone coverage, and they're switching up a little bit. They had some good pieces in the first round of the draft, so that's big time there. Another pass rusher in Karlaftis, so that definitely helps. They have that talent to win it. The Buccaneers, for sure, 2 years ago they won it because they had the best roster in football. Last year they were up there, best roster in football, but they were beat up in the playoffs. Wirf's getting hurt in the playoffs. Godwin was out. Obviously, it felt like the DBs were a mess all year, just in and out, hurt constantly. So, now it's about staying healthy because if they're healthy, they're that good. And they got Big Tom, so you definitely have a shot. The Bills, I think most people would probably pick the Bills to have the best roster in football right now. So of course they have the chance. Josh Allen, who could actually continue to improve, Diggs, all those guys there. Offensive line was pretty bad to start last year, but then it was pretty damn good at the end there. So hopefully it continues to play well there for them. Defensively, they had a big time pass rusher in Von Miller. Russo can continue to improve. Oliver on the inside continue to improve. Tre'Davious White's back to add Kyer Elam in the mix. They got that stud safety duo. I think Edmonds was a top tier raw prospect to me when he was coming out. So it's one of those guys where it kind of makes sense that he's hasn't reached that peak yet. It makes a lot of sense. So at any given time, he can reach that spot where he's like, okay, he's one of the better linebackers in football. Like, it kind of sounds like a big jump, but to me, that's kind of was my evaluation from pre-draft. So it kind of all makes sense. So they're that talented. Can they get over that hump? They kind of slipped a little bit. And even though they had that game against the Chiefs last year, how will they be without Daboll? I'm not super worried, but there are some questions there with all these teams. And the Rams, defending Super Bowl champions, of course, they have a shot to win it again. No Von Miller, no Darius Williams as well. Odell's kind of a question, but they add Allen Robinson, a different element to that game. They didn't really have that contested catch wide receiver before. They had a bunch of separator, big playability, slot guys that also could play outside, which was great. So they had a kind of a different element, which I love because it's not like, all right, we know the Rams are very good. We know what they're about. Let's game plan for it now. No, you had a different element. And you got Akers full-time here as well. Stafford in the second year. Defensively, I think they'll be all right. Maybe they take a little bit of step down because they lost some guys. But I think they'll be just fine. Well coached as well. So we know the Rams got to be up here. So these are the teams I think actually could win it here. So everyone's opinion will be different. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We're playing a lot of people are commenting on Twitter, so that's a good way to get in touch with us. I always talk to you guys right away, interacting, a lot of posts on there, updates, news, and more. So join us on that Twitter link down below. Like, subscribe to notifications on because we have full NFL coverage here, a lot more to come. But that is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.